Okay, yeah, call me delusional. I'm a delusional European because I think Ukraine's borders should be respected. And Putin doesn't want a fucking diplomatic resolution either. He just wants to win the fucking war and is willing to throw millions upon millions of poor Russian men into the fucking hellfire to get it.
Just lose slower.
Yeah.
And so that's the question of like, why, what material interest does the United States have in all this?
Well, and not only
Dude,
that.
you don't need material interest in it to fucking do the right thing. What does that even mean? What material interest does the US, does it need material interest in order to support Ukraine?
But you also have to understand their perspective and what led to this aggressive action.
Imperialist ambitions, fascism.
And, you know, the NATO eastward expansion, the idea that Ukraine could be...
Yes, it's easy for me to say here from Washington, but we're the global superpower. We're the ones at the end of the day who get to decide how the conflict ends. And, you know, if you want...
He said that?
When Vladimir Putin, when he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, he didn't mention NATO. He gave like a 45-minute lecture about how Russia had historical land rights to Ukraine.
Yes!
He didn't bring up...
I forgot that. I forgot about that. I need to get better at this. Fucking witch. This woman is making me misogynist.
States and investigative journalist Seth Harp is going to join us to discuss this live today for premium.
BreakingPoints.com, monthly or year. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube, family member.
No,
So we're gonna
don't
start with
subscribe
the
to
Ukraine
Breaking
Trump
Point.
Summit. Or
Don't subscribe to Breaking Point. Don't do it. Don't do it.
sorry, Trump-Russia summit. Ukraine is still a questionable one. It will take place on Friday in Alaska. A lot going on here behind the scenes. Here is Trump now talking about it in the Oval Office. Here's what he had to say.
President Zelensky has to get all of his everything he needs because he's going to have to get ready to sign something, and I think he is working hard to get that done.
What is he going to sign? It's not up to you or Putin if Zelensky signs it.
Well, you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, you know, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back and we're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. And but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever.
Pay very close attention to what he said there about the swapping of territories. That is going to be the crux of the entire summit and whether or not it is successful or not. Let's go and put this AP story up on the screen. Trump says he will meet Putin next Friday in Alaska to discuss the end of the Ukraine war. It remains up in the air whether President Zelensky will attend. Originally, they had floated a summit which was bilateral between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and then
Putin doesn't want Zelensky there. Of course he doesn't want them there. Putin wants... Here's the thing. Putin want to go back to like the Napoleonic era, where maps were drawn and boundaries were set up, and between great powers, and these great powers then got their own little spheres of influences with principalities and thieving kingdoms that at the end of the day just did exactly what the big power which they were inside of, like within which sphere of influence they were inside of. And that's where Putin want to go back to. You want to go back to the fucking era, like the Napoleonic Russian Empire era, where it was just great power thinking and spheres of influence. And we're not there anymore. That time is fucking over. And that's why Putin doesn't want Zelensky there. He doesn't want Ukraine at the table because he wants this to be a discussion between great powers. He basically wants the United States, which is NATO, and Russia to carve up Europe. That's what he wants to do. And if you don't realize that, he's going to play you like a fucking fiddle.
trilateral, including the Ukrainians. However, the Ukrainians are making quite a bit of noise now afterwards and drawing some red lines of their own in the sand. This entire idea of swapping territory is the one which the Russians are going to have the most trouble with, Crystal. All of the, by the way that this has all come about is so preposterous that, look, I mean, I generally am more supportive of Witkoff, I think, than most other members of the administration, but this is part of the problem with having a guy who's doing Gaza and in Ukraine and also previously built previous qualifications for building the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas, is basically he met with Putin. Putin was like, sure, yeah, let's end the war. I'll have a ceasefire. And that will entail basically freezing things where they are. Witkoff thought that to mean that he would be open to not just a ceasefire, but potentially giving up some territory. Putin and his comments have been like, no, that's not what we're doing. Right. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are like, hold on a second, we can have a ceasefire. By the way, Ukrainian law says that we need to have a national referendum on whether any of that's going to happen. Remember, the entire country, plus the delusional Europeans, all still believe that Ukraine needs to be restored to its original borders. So
delusional?
Including Crimea. So
you're fucking delusional. Okay, yeah, call me delusional. I'm a delusional European because I think Ukraine's borders should be respected. The borders that even Russia agreed to. That Ukraine give up their fucking nuclear arsenal to have, guaranteed. Yeah, of course we want them to go back to that. You're fucking calling that delusional? The delusional people are those who thinks Russia has any fucking right to a single square centimeter of Ukrainian soil. That's the delusional freaks.
Like, we are basically nowhere in terms of the conflict. There's been no diplomatic resolution. At the same time, Trump has introduced these secondary sanctions.
Putin doesn't want a fucking diplomatic resolution either. He just wants to win the fucking war and is willing to throw millions upon millions of poor Russian men into the fucking hellfire to get it.
On countries like India, which currently has a 50% tariff. The policy of the United States right now is all over the map. We are both in a more hawkish direction with harder sanctions than Joe Biden ever proposed. The United States is currently shipping just recently some $250 million of offensive weaponry to the Ukrainians, including the shipping of a Patriot battery, which was never open under the Biden administration. And yet at the same time, we're meeting here with was never weaponry to the Ukrainians, including the shipping of a Patriot battery, which was never
based
open under the Biden administration. And yet at the same time, we're meeting here with Putin. I mean, look, my card's on the table. I want the war to end, but that's going to require some serious compromise from the Ukrainians and the Europeans, which they have not yet been able to make. So right now, things are crazy. They are just totally ambiguous. The summit itself and how it will all come about is one which is indicative of the Trump.
Like, do you have no principles? They have literally zero fucking principles. Why is there a fucking war going on? Who started it? I hate the I just want the war to end rhetoric. Because I might be a bit conspiratorial, but do they?
Administration, which is like flitting about
asking
basically from policy
questions.
to policy. We went from berating Zelensky in the Oval, saying you don't have the cards, to actually he does have the cards because he's getting most of what he wants.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
We're meeting with Putin on Friday. We'll see what happens in Trump's words because I don't really have anything else.
Yeah. Well, let me start with the positive. It's
Yeah,
what they're
yeah, it's good. I agree. I agree.
support it. I support
Listen,
them
they
meeting
should have met on day
Venezuela.
one.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. The only way.
Oh no, now we have to listen to Crystal. Oh.
You're going to be able to resolve this is through these sorts of meetings. So I will say that is a positive step in the.
How do you resolve it when one of the warring sides isn't even close by? Not even fucking invited. How are they going to create peace when the Ukraine can't have a fucking ceasefire forced upon it? They decide if they want to go into a ceasefire or not fucking Trump.
right direction.
I'm with you.
I want to dwell a little bit on what you're saying about Witkoff, because this was a major screw up from him. He appears to have completely misrepresented or misunderstood the Russian position in terms of what they were willing to quote unquote give up, which is basically they're not actually willing, at least from the outset, to give up anything. And so he misstated that, created a lot of confusion, had to walk it back. And, you know, I think it's worth reassessing a lot of the Witkoff hagiography that we got at the beginning of this administration, not just because of this sort of like amateur hour fuck up with a major high stakes negotiation such as this, but we also know at this point that with regard to Israel, Palestine, Gaza, Witkoff has not been part of the solution. At the end of the day, he has been just as much a part of undermining, towing Netanyahu's line and destroying those negotiations with Hamas as Trump himself and as Netanyahu. So I think it's worth us putting to bed the idea that Steve Witkoff was going to be some wild card, great negotiator, going to bring world peace. That has not been the track record that this man has, that we've seen from this
Even
man.
though originally, there was some promise, but it's like you said, especially with the Gaza, with the way that has all come about, it does raise serious questions here about Russia, the way that Russia, and the problem with the schizophrenia of the Russia policy is that you can basically look into this whatever you want. And I know I'm dwelling on this, but it's very important.
Schizophrenic is one way to put it. Definitely.
You follow the details. So on the one hand, we're shipping weapons and we're taking more hawkish views than Biden. On the other, we're now meeting with Putin. But listen, I agree. I'm all for meeting, but all of the concrete policy has drifted.
Well, Trump has been starting to send more and more armament to Ukraine, and I think it's because he's starting to realize that the Russians aren't interested in talking, they're not interested in listening, they're not interested in finding a compromise. So I think Trump is getting more and more forced to take a more hawkish position. On top of that, you also have Marco Rubio, who's a fucking hawk. Like, he's an absolute cunt, but God bless him for being a hawk on Russia. And then I think I read, or did I read somewhere? I heard from somewhere that Melania was also like, oh, Russia bombed another hospital. Oh, Russia bombed another apartment building in central Kyiv. Oh, so maybe it's getting more like, maybe it's getting influenced by that as well. I don't know. I just think it's a good thing that he is becoming more hawkish on Russia and is willing to send more equipment to Ukraine, because Germany isn't doing enough. I would say France is not doing enough. The most equipment has been sent, like, at least in Europe, per capita, it's, the Nordic and Baltic states have sent a lot. Poland as well, at least during the prior government. I don't know so much how it is nowadays, but yeah, they need to send more fucking shit to Ukraine. Fucking do it. Based.
In the wrong direction.
Yeah.
We're shipping weapons,
Yeah.
we're doing more sanctions, and we're basically demanding that Russia pull back, from whatever it's Donetsk or whatever province exactly that they want to fully control, along with the two capitals, which they say the Ukrainians need to withdraw from. At the same time, we are not really doing much to quell the European and Ukrainian delusions that all their territory is ever coming back. Every day that the war continues, they lose territory. This is an empirical fact. And you can look at the realities of the battlefield on the ground. We could ship them everything that we don't have.
They've also regained a lot of territory. So,
To the ground that isn't going to start a nuclear war, and they would still lose.
also, it's every day they lose. Oh, they lost a couple of square meters here and there. It's not very often that Russia does like big pushes and get big gains, and that usually costs a lot of manpower.
just lose slower.
Yeah.
And so that's the question of like, what material interest does the United States have in all this?
Well, and not only that.
You don't need material interest in it to fucking do the right thing. What the fuck does that even mean? What material interest does the US, does it need material interest in order to support Ukraine?
So that the territory is one piece and one gigantic stumbling block. But then you also have to ask, okay, well, what were the underlying conditions that led to Russia's invasion?
Of course.
And this is, again, not to deny Russia's agency
Yes.
and that they shouldn't have done it and all of those sorts of things. But you also have to understand their perspective and what led to this aggressive action.
Imperialist ambitions, fascism.
And, you know, the NATO eastward expansion, the idea that Ukraine could be...
Man, this is so hard to watch. This is so hard to watch. Don't fucking come at me with the NATO eastward expansion. That shit was fucking disproven years ago. I don't understand why people are still running with that fucking line of reason. Let's see what happens.
NATO, our efforts to pull Ukraine into a European sphere versus having Ukraine be a neutral party. Those
No,
are the
because they don't want to be a neutral party.
Having Ukraine be a neutral party into expansion, the idea that Ukraine could be part of NATO, our efforts to pull Ukraine into a European sphere versus having Ukraine be a neutral party.
It's not the West drawing Ukraine to themselves. The Ukrainians wants to be a part of the West. Why the fuck do you think the revolution in 2014 happened? Why the fuck do you think they ousted Yanukovych? Why the fuck do you think they still would vote with a massive majority to join the EU? With every fucking poll? Because Ukrainians want to be a part of the West. It's their fucking choice. It's not up to us whether they want to be part of the West or not, or if they should be neutral. Let the Ukrainians decide that. But that fucking retarded Kremlin talking point that Europe is like fishing line, like, and then reeling it into themselves. It's fucking retarded. And it's a Kremlin talking point. That's what you have to understand. It's a Kremlin talking point. It is. It's not grounded in reality.
Those are the underlying conditions that led to this provocative and, yes, illegal action from Russia. So is the Trump administration...
So on one hand, you're saying, oh yeah, it wasn't provocative and illegal, but also, you know, they had their reasons. So was it So do you think it was unprovocative or not? That's what I'm talking about. She's a fucking grifter. She's a massive fucking grifter. She doesn't believe in anything.
Going to be serious about dealing with those underlying conditions. You also, you know, we talk a lot about, and understandably so, okay, if we made a deal with Putin, can we trust Putin? They have to be asking the same question. Can they trust us?
Of course.
I mean, look at the way our country in general operates, not just under Donald Trump, but look specifically at how Donald Trump operates. There's no reason for them to trust us and our good faith in any negotiation. Just look at how we've acted with, again, Israel.
With Iran also.
And Iran. Exactly. We use the pretext of diplomatic negotiations to...
They've been able to trust the West for fucking ever since the fall of the Soviet Union. But Europe has never attacked Russia. We've never even made any threats to attack Russia. It's the Russian Air Force that are doing scourges into Western airspace. It's not Western Air Forces doing the opposite. What the fuck are they talking about? That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
An offensive, aggressive war against the Iranians. So why would any country in the world, and certainly not an adversarial one like Russia, trust that we're coming to the table in good faith? So when we were talking about how much of a problem that was, that we used the pretext of diplomatic negotiations, it wasn't just about what the fallout would be with regard to Iran. It was also about how will we be able to approach these other high-stakes diplomatic negotiations and have anyone take our word for anything. So that also remains, you know, a major issue going into this tete-a-tete.
I said that so much at the time. I was like, does anybody understand what it means to use diplomatic negotiations as a ruse? I was like, by the way, Iran is small ball compared to Russia and to Ukraine. And I don't think that there's any mistake that Putin, at every turn when Trump is like 50 days, he's like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to keep bombing Kyiv.
Yeah.
And then the next day, they're like 12 days. He's like, yeah, okay,
Sure,
I'm just going to keep bombing. He's like, what are you going to do about it? I'm a nuclear armed state with 9,500 nuclear warheads. Go for it. You can put all the, deals or whatever you want on the table. Here's the vice president talking about the issue recently in an interview. Let's take a listen.
Fundamentally, this is something where the president needs to force President Putin and President Zelensky really to sit down to figure out their differences. We have a lot of economic points of view.
Didn't Zelensky go to fucking Istanbul for a meeting with Putin and then Putin didn't show up?
To use those to bring about peace. And that was a big thing that happened. To your point about weapons, what we said to the Europeans is simply, first of all, this is in your neck of the woods. This is in your back door. You guys have got to step up and take a bigger...
But Europeans are! Per capita. Let's take a look at this. Ukraine support tracker. This is total bilateral aid government allocations in percentage of GDP. Let's. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. I'm just going. Give me a second. He's saying step up? This fucking rat? Okay, the map isn't getting bigger. Cool. Your mom. So let's click, for example, the United States. Rank 1. Rank 16. Per GDP. Let's go my home country. Sweden. Rank 8 in total money. 6th in per GDP. Rank 10, yeah, for sure, but rank 5 in per GDP? Poland, Germany has not done enough. But in total amount of money, 21 billion euros. And this is just value. They don't send like brand new stuff. Like what the United States has sent is mostly like, what would you call it? It's mostly old stuff that would have been scrapped anyways. It's old Bradleys that are sitting in fucking warehouses, which would have to be scrapped, but instead were sent to Ukraine. And then they put a money value on that. It's better to send it to fucking Ukraine than to scrap it, isn't it? But to say that Europe is not stepping up is so fucking stupid. I think Estonia is... Which country's number 1? Rank 8. I think we should go higher. Come on, Sweden. We can go higher. Oh, Denmark is the number 1 in GDP. And rank 6. Come on. We can't let the Danes beat us. What the fuck? It's time to send fighter jets. Do it. Now we have some more archers on the way and whatever. But it's fucking cope. Rank 30 in percentage per GDP. No, rank 16. Do I agree that Europe needs to do more? Yeah, but he's talking like Europe isn't doing fuck shit when they obviously are. Okay, let's listen to the femboy VP a bit more.
Role in this thing. We're done with the funding of the Ukraine war business. We want to bring about a peaceful settlement to this thing. We want to stop the killing. But Americans, I think, are sick of continuing to send their money, their tax dollars to this particular...
But you're not sending money and tax dollars. You're sending fucking surplus equipment. That's the word I was looking for before. You're sending surplus equipment. You're sending old Bradleys sitting in fucking warehouses. That's mostly what you've been sending.
Conflict.
That's such a lie. Saying that You're sending fucking tax money? Actually, you're saving money because it's cheaper to send those old Bradleys to Ukraine than it is to scrap them.
But if the Europeans want to step up and actually buy the weapons from American producers, we're okay with that, but we're not.
Oh yeah. Europeans are only stepping up if they're buying the equipment from the US and then send it to Ukraine instead of sending their own stuff.
Fund it ourselves anymore.
Yeah, with great respect, that's the Biden policy, right? I mean, the Biden policy was just U.S. and Europeans. You know, remember the talking point of like, oh, it's going to be great for the U.S. economy. I'm like, oh, really? The defense dollars, of course, are widely distributed across our economy. So we're dealing with that. We've also got Zelensky sounding off here. And look, I understand, you know, it's an emotional thing for the Ukrainians and for a lot of Ukraine supporters here in America, but you need to deal with reality. You're a small country, you're up against a nuclear armed power. It's a non-NATO nation. There's no obligation for the United States to defend you. And you're drawing lines in the sand, which were ridiculous on the day that the war started and Crimea was already overtaken, and frankly, like delusional in the year 2025. But here's what Zelensky had to say.
Delusional. Thinking that Ukraine... Wait. Thinking that Ukraine has the right to control their own sovereign territory is delusional? Delusional?
He says, quote, Ukraine is ready for final decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions that are without Ukraine are at the same time decisions against peace. They will not achieve anything. These are stillborn decisions. They are unworkable decisions. And we all need real and genuine peace, peace that the people will respect. Basically saying that anything that Ukraine does not sign off on is one that is completely bunk and will, of course...
No shit, because they're fighting the fucking war.
Now, here's the issue, you know, with that, is that the Ukrainian position is one that is, again, I mean, it is completely delusional. Let me read here specifically from the Ukrainian and European counter ceasefire proposal. What they say is that in a joint statement from the Europeans, as well from Germany, the UK, and France, is all that any diplomatic end must protect Ukraine and Europe's security interests, but that specifically their ceasefire proposal, quote, crucially, a European plan, which presented to all of the Americans, stipulates
You don't enter peace negotiations with your minimal. With your minimal position, right? You enter peace negotiations with your maximum position. Is that how you would say it? It's like, this is what we want if we get everything we want. And then you kind of go back and then you find some sort of middle ground. Russia is going in with that. And Russia's peace position isn't fucking delusional. That Ukraine should not be allowed into the EU or into NATO, and that they should be neutral as in another 5 to 10 years we'll attack again. That's not delusional? Of course you enter peace negotiations asking for fucking everything. And then you have to take a couple of steps back until you can reach a middle point. That's what you fucking do. Otherwise you'll look weak.
Any territorial concession by Kyiv must then be safeguarded by ironclad security guarantees, including, quote, potential NATO membership for Ukraine. And it just doesn't make any sense to give NATO membership for Ukraine in a war that started, at least in part, because of a NATO invitation for Ukraine.
That's not why it started. It started because Putin lost a fucking puppet.
Join NATO. I already know, the neocons and all these other people will get very upset about this, but look at the history of it. Ukraine has always been a linchpin of Russia's security strategy. I'm not saying it's legitimate, it just has been. It has been recognized from the beginning of...
But fuck that. Poland was. The Baltic state was. They're now in NATO. Maybe Ukrainians should be allowed to decide democratically what they think their country should be? I don't know. Just a wild thought.
The expansion of NATO by George Kennan, by Bill Burns, who was a previous CIA director under Joe Biden, they all said in writing, they're like, look, even expanding into the Baltics is a problem, but Ukraine must always remain off the table. And then, if we look at the exact moment that U.S.-Russia relations completely flipped on a dime, was when? The Munich Security Conference of 2007. That is very around the time that we invite Georgia and Ukraine to enter NATO. And what does Putin do in 2008? Does everybody remember? It was like, what was it, Putin at the Beijing Olympics, I think in 2008, while the Russians march into Georgia. And now similarly here with Ukraine, where the Kamala and the Biden administration were making a lot of steps towards actually formalizing Ukraine into...
Maybe the reason why he fucking invaded is because he realized he was about to lose a fucking puppet. That's all it is. It's imperialism. But Russian imperialism is understandable, and we should just accept it.
NATO, and then lo and behold, we gotta find ourselves in a war.
Fucking the democratic decisions and the democratic will of people in Georgia and Ukraine doesn't matter? Who are these people to fucking say that? Who are these people to decide that?
Not just justify the war, it's just reality.
Yeah.
And it's one where, I understand the Ukrainians are like, well, how can we ever, want peace? I'm like, listen.
And Russia threatened with fucking nuclear fire if Finland and Sweden joined NATO, and then we did, and nothing happened.
Your victory is you get to live. You get to live to fight another. You get to keep 80% of your country. That's a decent deal considering all the amount of money and the amount of lives that everybody has expended. Yes, it's easy for me to say here from Washington, but we're the global superpower. We're the ones at the end of the day who get to decide how the conflict ends. And if you want.
Did he said that? He said that? What the fuck? We're the global superpower? We're the ones who get to decide how this ends? Come on, bro. Oh my god. It can't be real. It can't be real. I have to quit streaming after this. I'm spending too much time. This is fucking ass.
Otherwise, well, get some nuclear weapons. I don't really know what else to say to you.
Yeah.
Zelensky, he's a serious problem.
Yeah, no, he is a problem at this point. I mean, I think he has this Hollywood conception of he's the main character and there's a glorious happy ending in which all the, evil is vanquished and good prevails and he doesn't have to budge a single inch off his position. And, Biden certainly fed into that delusion. Now Trump has as well. After the whole bullying in the Oval Office, then Zelensky ends up getting all of the things that he ultimately wants. I think it speaks to Trump's persona and the way he approaches these things. I think he believed, he thinks everything's like a freaking real estate negotiation. Mm-hmm. And then you can just get in a room and you can, get some rapport with the various players and figure out some kind of a deal that's going to work. And so he used his typical tactics of public bluster and, the theatrical display in the Oval Office. And when that didn't work, now it's just kind of a mess. It's hard to even say what the administration's position is. Remember the whole minerals deal? Whatever came of that? What does that even mean in all of this going forward? Is that even a real thing? Who knows? So, yeah, I think it's a real wild card.
I'm speechless. I'm absolutely fucking speechless.
And I would love to be proven wrong. We'll see. But the other piece is that it is very difficult to end wars. It shouldn't be that way.
I can't listen to these fucking cunts. Holy shit. Oh my god. What the fuck? Hutch, please.
He's working hard to get that done. Well, you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping complicated. It's actually nothing easy.
That fucking shit gave me a brain aneurysm. Oh my god. I felt like I was going fucking insane. I'm back. I'm fine. I'm alive. I think. I'm alive. I think I'm fine.
And we're going to get some back, and we're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories.
Putin at no point has given any indication that he would be willing to cede any territory
No.
that he's taken over. So this is just a pipe dream. There's no way this is going to happen. There's no way they're going to convince Vladimir Putin and Russia to, give back territories that they've taken. It's just not going to happen.
To both, but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever.
Pay very close attention to what he said there about the swapping of territories. That is going to be the crux of this entire summit and whether or not it is successful or not. Let's go put this AP story up on the screen. Trump says he will meet Putin next Friday in Alaska to discuss the end of the Ukraine war. It remains up in the air whether President Zelensky will attend. Originally, they had floated a summit which was bilateral between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, and then trilateral, including the Ukrainians. However, the Ukrainians are making quite a bit of noise now afterwards and drawing some red lines of their own in the sand. This entire idea of swapping territory is the one which the Russians are going to have the most trouble with, Crystal. By the way, the way this has all come about is so preposterous that, look, I mean, I generally am more supportive of Wickoff, I think, than most other members of the administration, but this is part of the problem with having a guy who's doing Gaza and Ukraine and also previous qualifications of building the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas is basically he met with Putin.
Fucking hell, is it 2 times speed? Yes.
Ceasefire, and that will contain basically freezing things where they are. Wickoff got that to mean that he would be open to not just a ceasefire, but potentially giving up some territory. Putin in his comments have been like, no, that's not what we're doing. Right. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are like, hold on a second, we can have a ceasefire. By the way, Ukrainian law says that we need to have a national referendum on whether any of that's going to happen. Remember, the entire country, plus the delusional Europeans, also believe that Ukraine needs to be restored to its original borders. Including Crimea. So it's like, we are basically nowhere in terms of the conflict. There's been no diplomatic resolution. At the same time, Trump has introduced these secondary sanctions on countries like India, which currently has a 50% tariff.
She's just so blasé about Russia being allowed to, take that territory and just keep it. And it feels like such a disconnect when we compare her takes on Israel and Gaza. She treats the Russian annexation of Ukrainian territories as like, hey, well, what are you going to do, right? They're this bigger military. And I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe
the policy of the United States right now is all over the map. We are both in a more hawkish direction with harder sanctions than Joe Biden ever imposed. The United States is currently shipping just recently some $250 million of offensive weaponry to the Ukrainians, including the shipping of a Patriot MAP battery, which was never open under the Biden administration. And yet at the same time, we're meeting here with Putin. I mean, look, my cards on the table. I want the war to end, but that's going to require some serious compromise from the Ukrainians and the Europeans, which they have not yet been able to make. So right now, things are crazy. They are just totally ambiguous. The summit itself and how it will all come about is one which is indicative of the Trump administration, which is like flitting about basically from policy to policy. We went from berating Zelensky in the Oval saying you don't have the cards to actually does have the cards because he's getting most of what he wants. Yeah. So yeah, it's that's where we're at right now. We're meeting with Putin on Friday. We'll see what happens in Trump's words because I don't really have anything else.
Yeah, well, let me start with the positive. I heard it as a major amount of well. Good. The only way you're going to be able to resolve this is through these sorts of meetings. So I will say that is a positive step in the right direction. I want to dwell a little bit on what you're saying about Wickoff because this is
Also, yeah, I'm brain dead after that. Yeah, but that has been one of my big criticisms of parts of the left. Like, I can't take a lot of them seriously. Partly because it's like fuck, what am I even supposed to say? Like, in Russia and Ukraine, it's like, oh, Russia has the bigger military, they just have to fucking do whatever Russia wants. Because, they have nukes, so whatever. But they don't have that same opinion when it comes to fucking Gaza, right? And maybe imperialism is always bad. I don't know, that's my take. It might be a bit of a hot take. Maybe imperialism is always fucking bad. And maybe if they used, the same type of rhetoric for Ukraine that they use for Gaza, I would respect them more, but I genuinely don't. Especially these fucking grifters. I hate them so much. Especially Crystal. Oh my god.
From him. He appears to have completely misrepresented or misunderstood the Russian position in terms of what they were willing to quote unquote give up, which is basically they're not actually willing, at least from the outset, to give up anything. And so he misstated that, created a lot of confusion, had to walk it back. And I think it's worth reassessing a lot of the Wickoff hagiography that we got at the beginning of this administration, not just because of this sort of like amateur hour fuck up with a major high stakes negotiation such as this, but we also know at this point that with regard to Israel, Palestine, Gaza, Wickoff has not been part of the solution. At the end of the day, he has been just as much much a part of undermining, towing Netanyahu's line and destroying those negotiations with Hamas as, as Trump himself and as Netanyahu. So I think it's worth us putting to bed the idea that Steve Witkoff was going to be some, some wild card, great negotiator, going to bring world peace. That has not been the track record that this man has, that we've seen for this man.
Originally, there was some promise, but like you said, especially with the Gaza, with the way that has all come about, it does raise serious questions here about Russia, the way that Russia, and the problem with the schizophrenia of the Russia policy is that you can basically look into this whatever you want. And I know I'm dwelling on this, but it's very important if you follow the details. So on the one hand, we're shipping weapons and we're taking more hawkish views than Biden. On the other, we're now meeting with Putin. But listen, I agree, I'm all for meeting, but all of the concrete policy has drifted in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
We're shipping weapons,
Yeah.
we're doing more sanctions, and we're basically demanding that Russia pull back, from whatever it's Donetsk province exactly that they want to fully control, along with the two capitals, which they say the Ukrainians need to withdraw.
They're fucking grifters. Oh. There we go. No, it's what the fuck. I listened to this before.
At the
They
same time, we are not really doing much to quell the European and Ukrainian delusions that all of their territory is ever coming back. Every day that the
Delusions.
war continues, they lose territory. This is an empirical fact. You can look at the realities of the battlefield on the ground. We can ship them everything that we don't have strapped to the ground that isn't going to start a nuclear war, and they would still lose. They would just lose slower.
Yeah.
And so that's the question of what material interest does the United States have in all this?
Well, and not only that, so that the territory is one piece and one gigantic.
material interest is
But there's
fucking
also the underlying conditions that led to
insane.
Russia's fall.
I needed my bow for that. I remember. I'm stupid.
Oh, God.
That they shouldn't have done it and all of those sorts of things.
Oh, God.
But you
Oh,
also
here we
have
go.
to understand their perspective and what led to
Oh,
this
God.
aggressive action.
Whoa.
The NATO eastward expansion, part of NATO, our efforts to pull Ukraine into a European sphere versus having Ukraine be a neutral party.
They don't want Ukraine to be a neutral party. They want Ukraine to be a fucking in the Russian sphere. Undemocratically, by the way. Very important to remember. Undemocratically. The Ukrainians want to be in the EU. They want to be in NATO. And they're not willing to give it up for peace. Like there was that big poll that came out just a couple of days ago showing that. But it's once again, they're pulling them into the Western sphere like they're fucking fishing. Insanity.
Oh, my God.
Conditions that led to this provocative and yes, illegal action from.
What unbelievable. I don't need to watch any more of that. What
Yeah.
unbelievable hypocrisy.
Oh, my God,
Especially if you're going to
I should have also quit.
moralize and purity test on Gaza the way that she does, and then just to have this attitude that, think about it from Russia's perspective. Give me a fucking break. What an
True. Oh my God. It's so true.
unbelievable hypocrisy here.
I mean, the truth is, I think we do know from the non-answer. I think if the answer was yes, we should block the weapon.
If you're against imperialism, if you're against absorbing territory into your border, such as the case with Gaza, they're talking about just taking it and permanently occupying it. If you're against that, but you're making excuses for Russia, when Vladimir Putin, when he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson, he didn't mention NATO. He gave a 45-minute lecture about how Russia had historical land rights to Ukraine.
Yes.
He didn't bring up
Fuck. I forgot that. I forgot about that. I need to get better at this.
NATO. It's just fully sweeping for Vladimir Putin in this spot. It's just unbelievable hypocrisy.
We would have.
I think it's a grift more than hypocrisy. I think it's a fucking grift. It's the anti-West grift. As long as something is against the West or anti-West or anti-America, you can say whatever the fuck you want. It's fucking psychotic. It's insane. Anyways, I'm fucking done with that. Let's watch this. This is cute. Hey!
Gotten that answer. The truth is, he understands, because he's not a stupid guy, as we all know, he understands where the Democratic base is and wants to sort of signal his empathy for that position without actually taking a position that would put him at odds with, where some of his donor base is. And you can only, when I ask the question, who is this for? In Pete's example, we know exactly who it's for. This is donor means. That's what he's doing here.
Maybe where does the Democratic base stand on Ukraine? I'm just asking questions.
And he thinks, because he's a very slippery operator, that at this point, he can get away with sort of like restating the question and evincing empathy for the position without actually explaining where he is. And I hope.
He did explain what he would do. I mean, he said it, in my opinion, quite clearly. Like, there's not really a lot of confusion about what he meant when he described, what his approach is with Israel would be.
What he, and I hope everybody else is learning, is that is not going to cut it. And there's so much about his answer, Ryan, that just disgusts me. First of all, Palestinians are being murdered every day, and we still have to center what's good for Israel.
Like Ukrainians are being murdered every fucking day. Like thousands of the Ukrainian children have been kidnapped and forced into foster care in Russia, where they're like brainwashed into thinking that their parents like left them and that their country abandoned them, and how they should love Russia and Putin. Let's not bring that up.
I'm sorry, Ukrainians are being murdered every day, and we have to center what we think about Russia. She's doing more. She's giving more charitability to Russia, which is an adversarial nation.
Exactly.
Invested in the downfall
Yes.
of Western liberalism.
Yeah, because she's a hack fraud. She's not a leftist.
More to meet like Putin where he's at, without giving any kind of consideration to how to navigate a relationship that America has had for several decades. It's not some small, straightforward, like quick thing to just unwind a diplomatic partnership such as the one that we have with Israel. That is something that requires a lot of thought and a lot of consideration and a lot of complexity.
They just care that they...
Yep. Like, but I kind of feel like I've said enough, but I totally forgot about the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin. He didn't talk about NATO because NATO is a fucking excuse. It's a cope. Russian leadership doesn't care about, especially not Putin at least, doesn't care about NATO expansion. If he did, he would have done something in the early 2000s when Poland joined and the Baltic states joined. Or why didn't he do shit when Sweden and Finland joined? Because it's not about NATO. It's not about NATO expansion. It's that Putin doesn't believe that Ukraine has a right to exist because he doesn't believe Ukraine is like a country and Ukrainians isn't a thing. It's fascism. And they're giving so much leeway to him. It's fucking disgusting. Anyways.
These are being starved to death and our government is complicit. Can we just care about the fact that people are being massacred just trying to seek aid every day in the Gaza Strip? Is that okay? Or do I need to worry first?
The moralizing here is just, it's especially pathetic compared with her coverage of Russia-Ukraine. I guess there's no thought to the Ukrainians that are suffering.
No, there's not.
Grave and murderous injustice that Russia is enacting on their smaller neighbor.
About how Israelis are feeling about this and what this means for the future of Israel. I find that posture to be morally grotesque at this point. Second of all, and it ties...
I find her...
Okay, and I find your fucking position on Russia to be morally grotesque. And Russia and Ukraine to be morally grotesque. But there we just have to fucking... That's me, as a European, being delusional? Fucking witch. This woman is making me misogynist.
Ukraine position to be grotesque, to be quite frank with you. It's crazy.
Into that, moral atrocity, in my opinion, is this idea that it's just Netanyahu who's the problem, and he can't be the only voice here. Oh, really? Well, he's not the only voice.
Why would you give charitability to Russia? Like more charitability to Russia than to Israel. Israel was 1,000 times more justified in taking military action against Hamas than Russia was to take military action against Ukrainians. Mm-hmm. Russia had no justification to take military action against Ukrainians, to go in there and just take territory and kill over 100,000 Ukrainians at this point. They had no justification whatsoever. At least Israel can say, 2,000 Hamas militants like went into Israel and murdered hundreds of innocent people.
And took
question if the situation on the ground in Israel, Palestine was the same.
Yeah, it's the double standard, and the fucking sweeping for Putin and Russia. It's not anti-imperialism. It's being anti-West. It's being anti-American, and as long as an imperial power is anti-West, they're good, and anything they do can be excused. That's the fucking issue.
But the USA
It's a fraud.
Israel, would they be pro-Palestine? Oh, I don't. We're getting into.
I believe
have
so.
No idea how to answer that question.
Because they're grifting hack frauds. As I said, I'm never gonna stop saying it.
The poll you look at says, you know what, Israeli society, they're on board with this. By and large, now there are some that, okay, how should we approach hostage? There is some dissent, but by and large, do they care about what's being done to Palestinians? By and large, the answer is no. Not to mention, the people who are really driving the ship oftentimes in terms of Netanyahu and his coalition are the most psycho extremists, Ben Gvir and Smotrich. Not to mention the so-called opposition figures who are supposedly more moderate say equally horrific and genocidal things. Like this idea that liberals love to hold on to, that it's just the fascist Netanyahu who's the problem. If we just got him out of there, then everything could revert to normal.
And once again, Russian officials are not.
Is a lie. I mean, I can't say it's a fantasy because I don't believe that he believes that. It's just a total.
I mean, I don't know what liberals are saying that all the problems would go away if we replace Netanyahu. Who's saying that? That would certainly help if we could replace him with someone more reasonable. It would certainly help. It wouldn't like fix the issue. I don't know who's saying every problem would just go away. Who's saying that?
Total and complete lie that he thinks allows him to.
I don't know. This makes me so fucking tired. So tired.
Maintain what is now a completely untenable position of thinking that liberalism and Zionism can coexist.
And to that point, in polls for the next Israeli government, of the top four, you got Netanyahu, and then the three below that. The three below are true Netanyahu's right. So this idea that you're going to moderate that he doesn't represent the full spectrum is just not accurate. A bunch of things jumped out in that quote. One of them was this fear he has of naming Israel.
Right. All this passive language.
One of his quotes was, "If a child is starving because of a choice made by a government, which government? Which government is that?" And I think I've seen you make the point, and I'm seeing more Democrats who Gaza is not a top issue for them, making it also, which is that they want to see somebody good on this issue. They don't want children starved, but more importantly, they want somebody who has moral fiber, and they believe that this is a proxy that if they're willing to stand up against the special interests that are pushing them to be bad on this issue, and they're still good on it, they're still willing to stand up, then that means they're going to be willing to stand up for democracy. They're going to be willing to stand up for people. Ta-Nehisi Coates had a great line that says, if you can't draw a line of genocide, why should I trust that you're actually going to stand up for democracy? And I think that
that's exactly right.
When people hear him say a child starving because of a choice made by a government, you sound scared. You sound weak. And we don't want scared and weak people now. And your point about restating the question is a good one too. And in the next clip, he does precisely that. I hadn't noticed that tick until you mentioned it, but here, let's play B7B, where he's asked about recognition of a Palestinian state.
Do you think it's time to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, or Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene, and many of the people who have taken
okay, now he's losing me a little bit. Like, just recognize the state of Palestine. Like, recognizing the state of Palestine as it looks now with the West Bank and Gaza will not, like, have that much of an effect on Israel's right to exist. Maybe imperialist expansion. But, I'm a based two-state solutionist, so, What do I know?
Step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution and that no one, not even the likes of Netanyahu, can veto the international community's commitment to a two-state solution where you have Palestinians and Israelis living with safety, with security, with rights. I believe that can happen, but we have to actually show some commitment to it.
I'm pretty unambiguously endorsing a statehood for Palestinians.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I didn't hear anything particularly wrong with that statement. Like you need a real, actual two-state solution.
Is their problem is that he doesn't endorse a one state? Is that what they're going to do here?
So that's a profound question. Yeah,
My Pete hatred is so vindicated.
Yes.
It's so vindicated.
Oh, fuck you.
Luckily, I don't know if Pete can overcome the demographic hurdles that he has to deal with in the primary in 2028. So I don't think he'll be the nominee. So
No.
thankfully we could. But honestly, guys, if he becomes the nominee, oh my God, we can all see it, right? If he becomes the nominee, I mean, it would be really bad. It would be really, really, really bad. Like, I think that lefties would go after him more viciously than the way they went after Hillary in 2016.
Oh my
I think it
god.
would be more.
Oh yes.
elevated.
Oh, absolutely. Like these people fucking hate Pete Buttigieg. He's, the stereotypical shitlub, whatever you want to call it. That would be a fucking, that would be chaos.
Again, thankfully, I don't know if he can overcome these problems with black voters and older voters. I just don't know if he can do that. But if we do live in the universe where he becomes the nominee in 2028, it's fucking over, boys. It's over. None of these people will have learned the lesson.
No.
Of the second Trump presidency.
Oh no, they're not gonna learn the lesson. Because I don't think they want to win. I think they want to be morally right and pure. And that's all they really care about. I'm so fucking lost. I think I know where I'm supposed to go.
Like all the awful things that have happened, like none of these people will have learned the lesson. They're going to actively work against him if he becomes the nominee. It's going to be a complete
God damn
shit
it.
show.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Yeah, it's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest questions, Ryan. That's what that is.
That's what that is.
Cool, thanks.
So Rokana, who was been floated as a 2028 candidate, did not appreciate that response. He put up the next element.
Yeah, I just wish they spoke, they used the same type of language and rhetoric around Ukraine. But it's not about being anti-imperialist. It's not about being... It's about being anti-West. That's where it starts and ends.
He says, I respect Pete. He diverges from you there. He says, I respect Pete, but we need moral clarity, not status quo. Yes, John Favreau, Dems should have voted for the Sanders Amendment. So there's an answer to the question. Yes, Dems should join my letter recognizing the Palestinian state. Again, an answer to the question. Yes, Trump and Biden disastrously failed on Gaza, and we need a new human rights-centered vision. So if you believe that Kana is testing the waters for 2028, his political sensibilities are sensing here that there is a lane here, that you can go after Trump and Biden here, and you can stand up here, you can go after other Democrats, and that Democrat voters will be with you. You think I can't think of anybody else who's kind of...
if we're imagining some like insurgent, leftist or leftist adjacent candidate who runs in 2028 and makes like Israel-Palestine the centerpiece of their campaign, I don't know.
Oh
if that's
my
gonna
god,
be,
they're gonna
it just really
lose
depends on
so
what happens,
hard.
but I don't think that it's likely that in 2028
They're gonna lose so fucking hard. If that's the only thing they run on.
Democratic primary voters are going to be, principally concerned about Israel, Gaza. I think they're going to be thinking about like inflation, unemployment. They're going to be thinking about like Donald Trump and, it's not like they're not going to be thinking about Gaza. It's just like, I don't know if this is going to be the thing that primarily motivates a large or even meaningful percentage of voters.
have dipped their toes in these waters, who's being more clear than him, which is kind of disturbing.
Yeah, and and I think
I think we're pretty done here. to be honest. And I might be done here as well for today. Oh well. Started off pretty slow, but man. That fucking Crystal and whatever this. Kyle, I don't remember his fucking name. Look at him, he's a fucking nobody. Makes me fucking flip my shit. Anyways, let's get rid of this. And I will just finish up the stream for today. Anyways, I'm tired. That really made me pissed off. I got pretty pissed off there. Genuinely. Oof. But it's fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing these streams. Yeah. I'll do a regular save as well. And I will say thank you for anyone who's coming today. And I hope you'll have a great rest of the day or evening or whatever the fuck, wherever it is you are. See ya. Bye.